Sisters and brothers, the gospel from Mark is about Jesus calming the storm at the Sea of Galilee. After a hectic day of performing many miracles and teaching, Jesus and his disciples were crossing the sea in a boat. Jesus was asleep because he was exhausted. A windstorm arose, and the waves became so rough that they were almost sinking. The frightened disciples woke Jesus up and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." The wind ceased, and there was dead calm. The God who in the first reading from the book of Job said that he alone has power over the sea and the waves, the same God through Jesus Christ exercises this power and control over the sea and the waves in the gospel of this Sunday. Considering the danger that they faced at sea, I begin to imagine how the frightened disciples woke Jesus up. Jesus, who was tired and was sleeping, he woke up, rebuking the wind and the sea, and finally rebuking his disciples for their lack of faith. I thank God each time I read this passage that I was not in that boat, because I do not know how to swim. Throw me into the water and I will sink like a rock. So I feel for the disciples of Jesus who faced that stressful and most disturbing situation. The windstorm and the waves represent all the problems and difficulties of our lives. Our problems are many and come in different shapes and sizes. They include natural disasters, wars, poverty, illness, unemployment, hatred, misunderstanding, and disappointment with spouse, children, relatives, the loss of a loved one, hard luck, and so on and so forth. Lots. These problems shake the very foundations of our being. They force us to lose hope and trust in God. For some of us, we get disoriented in the face of these problems. Our prayers at those moments appear to fall on deaf ears. Why? Because God pretends to be sleeping. I say pretends because does God sleep? This is the time we begin to behave like Job in the first reading of today. We do not see any justification for our suffering. We want an explanation from God. We tend to ask God, why? Why? And why? No explanation comes from God or anyone that can satisfy our quest for answers. We either demand answers from God like Job did, or we get so frightened like the disciples in the gospel of today that we get angry with God. we are angry at God's nonchalance. No matter what we do, God pretends to be sleeping. It is quite interesting that Jesus was with his disciples in the same boat, yet they faced serious danger while Jesus was asleep. It tells me that the presence of danger in our lives does not mean that God is not with us. No. In the book of Sirach, chapter 2, verse 1, we read, "My child, when you come to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for testing." And Jesus in the Gospels himself tells us, "If any want to be my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." Luke chapter 9, verse 23. So the fact that we experience challenges in life does not indicate that God does not love us or that he has abandoned us. If we have faith, we will not doubt that he is with us, even in times of trials and difficulties. In Isaiah chapter 43, verse 3, we read, "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." All we need to do is to wake God up with our prayers of faith. Prayers made in faith. The readings of today should give us a lot of hope. They tell us that God is always near, even when we are suffering. God has the power to alleviate our sufferings if he wishes, because he is in control of everything. But we do not dictate to God what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, because God's time is the best. We can only appeal to God's mercy. Sisters and brothers, because of the beautiful readings we have today, I have the following questions for my reflection. Number one, how do I react in moments of trials and tribulations? 2, do I lose hope and trust in God for any reason? 3, am I convinced that God is always present, even in my trials and tribulations? Finally, I'd like to ask myself, do I believe in the power of God to save me in my trials? Sisters and brothers, in addition to our own private intentions for this Mass, let us pray for the spiritual strength that we need to wake God up into action through our prayers, especially at the times of trials and tribulations. Let us pray to remember that God has put everything in this world in place and has power to make anything happen. Let us pray to realize that even righteous people who do God's will do suffer.